Hello, good evening, and thanks again for another edition of Ideas Exchange. Tonight, our focus will be on the Electoral Commission, what I see as an emboldened belligerence. We are going to look at the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, a committee which was very vibrant, which today we can remember in the past their activities which held the EC to account and helped us to build the integrity process of our elections. And today, the IPAC we know has virtually become moot, not able to operate efficiently. We want to find out what may have been the reason for it. This conversation will also look at your rights, the rights that EC and by extension the NIA are monetizing. And so your right to vote as a citizen has been monetized. If you don't have money today and you are poor, living in a deprived community, you may not be able to register. That is what is unfolding. It started last year. Part of this year, that conversation came up. It happened at the Parliament when NIA and EC were invited. They sought to suggest that that was the tangent they were going to follow. And EC is attempting to implement that as we prepare for the district assembly elections. Again, we also want to look at the threats of these activities and the growing insecurity in this country. Now, I've made reference to the Electoral Commission as a body. Just recently, something happened. That was Niger. And we knew the rhetoric by the AU and the ECOWAS. But today, something rather very interesting has happened. Because over the years, it will look as if African leaders have formed a gang. And so it is almost like a lodge, a group of people who seek to protect themselves. And so even as we talk about governance and democracy, we talk about democratic accountability, ECOWAS as a body is not interested. Their charter doesn't speak to that. All they do is to protect themselves. Even when governments have been elected and citizens or political parties are opposing their election as announced by the electoral commissions in those countries, the ECOWAS as a body, as in the case of Nigeria, will run ahead of time and make Nigerian president the chairman of ECOWAS. And today, I am making reference to Gabon, which has witnessed something that is very unusual. Because ideally, like Togo, when these governments decide to entrench themselves and want to govern countries in perpetuity and make it look like the states are for them, they try to weaken all institutions so that they can manipulate processes. But in Gabon, something funny happened. And the reason why I am making reference to Gabon is that it will feed into our conversation and why you as a Ghanaian must be interested. First, I'm playing back a report. This report by Arise News will tell you about what has been put together as the reason for the overthrow of the Gabonese president.
Had a military coup, you think of a bloody conflict coup. But in Gabon, it was different. I'm going to show you how it happened as it unfolded. So there were groups of soldiers walking in different streets, not one street, but several of them, playing band music. You know, the way soldiers carry the instruments, you know, the drums, the trumpets, playing in a band. So that's what happened in different streets. And the citizens in Libreville, the capital of Gabon, walked with them. And that happened as the military leaders were making an announcement on the national television. All this happened last night, the 30th of August, when a group of senior Gabonese military officers appeared on national television declaring that they have seized power, claiming the recent general election lacked credibility and saying that they represent all Gabon's security and defense forces. They also said that they have dissolved institutions, closed the borders, and, above all, ended the Bongo regime. And I suspect it's this that made a lot of people to come out to celebrate, because the Bongo regime has ruled that country since independence. So the first Bongo president, Omar Bongo, came to power in 1967. He was a dictator. He died in office in 2009. And then his son took power in 2009 up until now. So when the electoral body in Gabon made the mistake to announce the loser of the just concluded election as the winner, then the military decided to take power. And I don't blame the electoral body. It has never known any other master apart from the Bongo family. And this goes for all other institutions in that country. And that's why the army dissolved all the institutions, including the courts.
So the reason why I have played this report without interpreting things myself is that I want you to reflect on what I just played. This program will be repeated tomorrow, so you can find time to listen to it again. As we speak, I can say on authority that the Electoral Commission of Ghana and the NIA are on this same agenda, which will feed into this narrative of breaking the eight or break the eight, and they are treating an institution which was created by the state and being paid by the taxpayer, you and I, the poor mother in the village, whose sweat is adding on to the national cake, i.e. the national coffers, which is used to run these institutions, are running the NIA and the EC as if they are their personal properties. And I'll demonstrate to you in the conversation why all these things are happening, and it appears as if they don't care, because the Constitution is clear. Your right to vote is entrenched in the Constitution, and why it must be accessible by you is well put in there. But that is what is happening. But funny enough, this Bongo family who took Gabon as their personal property, when he was overthrown, you will see why it will appear as if it is a strategy by those who are supposed to help promote good governance. Listen to him asking his allies and friends of his government to come to his aid. And it was so very funny. It's in French, but there are some aspects in English you will appreciate.
I'm Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of Gabon, and I'm to send a message to all the friends that we have all over the world to tell them to make noise, For the people here have arrested me and my family. My son is somewhere, my wife is in another place, and I'm at the residence. Right now, I'm at the residence and nothing is happening. I don't know what's going on. So I'm calling you to make noise, really. I'm thanking you.
Last week, my topic was on democratic accountability and what I described as puppetism, where our leaders allow themselves to be manipulated. And I saw this in the posturing of the French president, Emmanuel Macron, when just 2 days ago, Nigerians were demonstrating that they should remove their forces from their ground. And this was his response. And he sounded very belligerent, calling the bluff of the Nigerians and threatening that they were ready to support ECOWAS to attack that country whose resources are being siphoned.
We do not recognize the putschists. We support a president who has not resigned, who will remain committed to, and we support the diplomatic action and military action should it be the case of ECOWAS, within a partnership approach which is the one I presented last February. Neither paternalism nor weakness, because otherwise we won't get.
So these are teasers to feed into why you and I should be angry today, because any action that is likely to plunge this country into chaos will be very bad. So there are some begging questions I will share with you on the screen, because you'll be reflecting on them before I introduce my guest, who is very experienced in issues about electoral matters. First, what could have emboldened the EC to be behaving this way? Could it have been the go-to-court mantra, rulings in its favor? Could it be a very weak IPAC today compared to the work done in the past, which was once vibrant and is on credit to have facilitated the integrity of our electoral system? Why is EC like the NIA monetizing your right to vote? What is the motivation? Why does it not care regardless of complaints? What is under their sleeves? What are the security implications? Does it matter if critical stakeholders like the TUC, which represents the average worker or taxpayer, the Ghana Bar Association, the Christian Council, the Peace Council of Ghana, the Council of State, the National Commission for Civic Education, some of our prominent traditional authorities look on or remain quiet? These are questions I want you to reflect on. But before I introduce my guest, listen to the Goso Mahene.
Ya mami je mensa. Ndiye no oje. Waba hafoda. Wonim asumra ekura edi asumra chi. Wonim kura edi kasapia chi. Nti sankofo so obia so twiro ni di onfa nipa miensa nka no. No onfro ka mra Goso. Na wode ka sika ba be jakwan so hana. Mesra no. On share said ye Mary a ya utimi wo Jesus ma yen. One ma confession bia ma o manu emra be fa oba so. Mesra no so tiamia. Once sa asem na waka no. No ma emmen no bia ntimi nkotwero ni din. If say wan hwe yi a no obi wo sika wo ba bia wo wa akiri. Nti so no akofa bus e de so ankofo mo mbeto abetwero mo din kwa. Na chese wo so mto abama no ebia no sa nipa no so kra ne empedo enso na wo sika ye koto abano ma no wie no okototo pa so a na ye ho anu aye ye keta hye no aye ka no a eno a na ne ye da so aye ka masre afa mi a me papa masre no nanado mpane chew me sada me sayam ontwe ne hu mfiri ni jefo asem masre no.
So that was the Goso Hene, and I'm throwing an open challenge to the Asante Hene, Otumfo Osei the second, because in 2008, I remember very well, when I was very active on reportages on electoral affairs, he sat as chair of the then peace accord that was signed, that saw us peacefully transit from the Rawlings regime to the Kufuor regime. And then again, we saw it in 2012 or so. And I believe that is an influential body who appreciates politics in Ghana, governance, and security threats. Same to very, very influential chiefs, like the Sikadu Mahini, who has recently spoken hardly, I want to say, about what he perceives about Parliament. There are several of them. Maybe I will add Ochehini, I will add Togbi Apade. All these chiefs must speak out. If institutions like the Ghana Bar Association, Trades Union Congress, name them, Christian Council, Council of State, all of them are compromised. The last resort will be our traditional authorities. My guest tonight is an agricultural economist. He holds PhD in agric economics and policy. He also boasts of PhD in finance, Master of Arts degree in economics, policy management, a researcher, and an astute politician with over 18 years experience, including teaching. He was the JCR president for Commonwealth Hall at the University of Ghana. He was nicknamed Vandal Bola, whether Bola or Bola, he will explain, and was affectionately referred to as Political Ronaldinho. Is that the name? Ronaldinho, okay. Ronaldinho. And in his days on campus. Until recently, he was Deputy General Secretary of the NDC Party School Working Committee. And now, as a result of his loyalty, he has been appointed as the Director in charge of Interparty and Civil Society Organization Relations. He is that's Dr. Peter Boama Otukono. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. That's a very long intro.
I tell you, because of your beard, I wanted to make sure your profile associates with...
You were matching the height of the beard.
Charlie, this name, how do you call it? Political Ronaldinho and then Vandal Bola. Yes. What does it mean? How did you get it? Were you that difficult, troublesome young man on campus then?
I was, I mean, by your standards, I'm sure you would say I was a very difficult person.
Sure.
But I was just a principal student. who felt that things must be done in a certain way in the interest of the students, because we were many and they were few. And so my advocacy on campus gave me those accolades. And most of my representation in the political front, student political front, gave me the political Ronaldinho title. But before I went to University of Ghana, I was called Bula Black. And in Commonwealth, I think the first week, there was some incident that happened and I had to stand in and speak on behalf of the students. After that, the chief vandal at the time just said, you will be called Vandabula.
And that became your name.
It became my name.
That is, which year was that?
That was 2005.
Okay.
2004. That was when I got the name.
Okay. All right. I'm told, how do you call it? Vandals are troublesome. They are dirty animals.
Well, we live under a culture and a belief that we should stand solidarized with each other. We should speak the truth and never fear to speak the truth. Okay. And so our motto is truth stands. And truth so stands. If you look at every vandal, I mean, President Mahama, myself, Ahianyo Idrisu, Kujeto Ablakwa, we kind of unique in our disposition to issues.
The women admire you.
Yes.
One of my younger brothers was also.
Oh yes, Fred. Godfred. I mean, Godfred was one of the people who inspired me to top JCR president because his time he lived very good.
when I sent the flyers round, he called me from the US that tell him that he should watch out. But tonight we are going to look at the Electoral Commission. It's a very serious issue. And the fact that we are looking at the Electoral Commission is that just last week, some political parties, I remember the PNC, CPP, GCPP, and I think there's another fourth party, held a press conference. That joint press conference called on the Electoral Commission to consider expanding the limited registration exercise. The EC has been very quiet. Tomorrow is first. EC wants to start on the 12th. And then we also know that the Goso Mahine has spoken. What is the reason for all this? So tonight, that's our conversation. But before we walk into that, when I played back the Gabonese coup and the reasons assigned to it, what was going through your mind?
Well, I have said time without number that the conditions in Ghana are far worse than the conditions in Ghana 1979. And it has been worse than any other condition in the history of this country which necessitated a coup. And that we are sitting on a time bomb. The youth are hopeless. The systems are collapsed. The institutions are weak. And, you know, the people are begging for some kind of leadership. And that if we don't manage the system very well, we are not strategic about the management of the system. We are at the brink of what happened in the past. Now, it becomes even more precarious when all around us there is a trend where the youth are taking, you know, issues and matters into their own hands through military coup d'etats. And unfortunately for us, our leaders, either they are blind or they have been clouded by ignorance or negligence. They are not doing the right things and pressing the right blocks which will keep the borders and our democracy secured and protected. You would see that beyond what President Akufo-Addo has done in the last 7 years, collapsing, weakening the institutions, what anchored our democracy, the only institution that anchors our democracy, which is the Electoral Commission, is the most corrupted of all. And so if you have corrupted the institution of democracy, the only institution which will give the people some semblance of hope, some modicum of hope, that democracy is still alive and there is a possibility of getting a good leader who would represent us properly and do the right things and bring comfort and progress to the country. You have weakened that institution, and they feel generally, ostensibly, that this institution is not worth providing that kind of leadership or providing that kind of change for them. Then they would have to produce the change themselves. And that is what has happened in Gabon. Bear in mind, the case of Gabon is different from the other French colonies and the coups that has happened. The case of Gabon is one family ruling the country over 40-something years. And you have the case whereby they have gone to an elections. And the president has weakened the electoral management body. Democracy has been broken. He has lost the elections. And because he has control of the Electoral Commission, just like Jim Mensah did in 2020, he's using the Electoral Commission to fix leadership for the country. And the people are saying enough is enough. Our case is just as close as what is happening in Gabon. Look, in 2020, I went around the country with our colleagues in the other parties to make an advocacy that, look, ladies and gentlemen, traditional leaders, our democracy is the source of your power. Even though you don't participate in politics, you exist. Your institution exists because there's democracy. If that institution breaks down, your institution also breaks down. So speak out. Most of them spoke out at the time when we were talking about the changing of the electoral management system and how electoral commission was behaving. But I am happy that this time more chiefs have started speaking. But we need more of them. As you said, you threw a challenge to my own king, Asante Hene, that this is the time that he must speak. We have seen other kings also speaking. We have seen the Domahene speaking. He speaks boldly. And that is the kind of leaders that we are looking for. If you look at the history of this country, those who fought for independence, mostly it started from the traditional, institution. They fought for the independence. We got Nkrumah, who led the blaze and, secured independence for us. So this is the time that they have to start speaking. Now, to Jane Mensah and the Electoral Commission. You see, Jane Mensah is not new to our electoral process. And bear in mind that even before she was announced the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, we in the NDC have had the cause to complain about some of the things she had done in private life as a civil society person. And we have had so many issues with her, to the extent that we had to boycott her IE. And we had indicated that she acts in the interests of the MPP, and we consider her MPP. To the extent that the husband came out publicly to say that, why? If she's MPP, so what? So they admitted that invariably she's MPP. So we were shocked when President Akufo-Addo threw caution to the wind and made her the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. Again, we also wanted to bang our hope on the fact that this is a constitutionally created body with restrictions that demands independence from you. So perhaps, maybe taking up the role, we would see some modicum of independence in their dealings. Unfortunately, what we saw was open, complete bias on behalf of the president. Then President Akufo-Addo brought other deputies as well. No, Dr. Bosman.
I'll go to that, and by extension, the three latest appointments, for which reason the petition was sent to the Council of State. But it is so sensitive that at this stage you would want to find out that, is national security aware? Do they put reports together? Are you privy to any report? Is government aware of the sensitive nature of how dangerous this path can be if EC doesn't pull its brakes?
Okay, Eric, I am privy to not one report, not two, not three, about four. The very first one in 2020, a national security report suggested that the threat to our security, the most significant threat to our security, was the Electoral Commission. And I recall the Minister of National Security had to invite us, the political parties, to sit down and discuss the way forward, how to, as it were, fix the seeming impasse between the political parties and the Electoral Commission. We did that. It yielded nothing. And you saw what happened in 2020. The killing of the 8 people, the irregularities that, engulfed the electoral process, how it ended up in courts, and how the courts was used to subvert the will of the people and all that. So that has happened. Now, in 2021, 2022, 2023, as we speak, the current report is still indicating that the Electoral Commission still remains the biggest threat for our national security. And I think if what is happening in Gabon is anything to go by, there should be plethora of lessons that we should be learning from that. But most importantly, it has become so because the government has deliberately corrupted that institution. Because the quality of every election is a function of the human resource that manages the election. If the human resource that is managing the elections lacks credibility, whether you like it or not, the results would be questioned because the individuals managing the process lack credibility.
But we'll go
and so that is why the appointment is very important. With Dr. Bosman coming up, I know Dr. Bosman from Legon. I know his disposition. I know the politics he used to do. He was a part of the Atascon patrons and all that. I know the role he played. And he was made a deputy. We decried that. Nothing happened. Recently, you saw what happened with the new appointments. I mean, political activists who sit on radio and speak on behalf of the MPP have been put at the electoral commission.
Why do you think this appears to be happening? The EC is emboldened, and it appears as if the biggest opposition party is not able to weave through systems that will bring them to order. Let me explain to you why I'm saying so. The NDC at least has petitioned the Council of State, which advises the president. Their response was clear, that they advise the president and they cannot reverse the decision they made, and that they are looking at the capacity of the people and not their political affiliation. That is a blunt response that should settle matters. And they will tell you that elections are won at the polling stations and not at the headquarters.
Eric, you know, that was a very unfortunate disposition to be taken by the Council of State. And I am saying this with so much pain because the chairperson of the Council of State is my grandfather. In fact, he's my chief in Dwabin. That is where I come from and where I'm a family head to my family in Dwabin. And so I know that he is very learned, and he has been in fact, he was part of the consultative assembly that wrote the Constitution. I was very worried of the disposition that came, the results that came, because I thought that with the evidence that we had provided, there would be a relook into the matter so that if they can counter-advise the president, why? They are to advise. If they have found evidence contrary to what was presented to them, and they want to counter-advise the president, they can do that. If the president decides to withdraw the appointment, fine. But at least for them admitting the evidence and taking a step against the evidence that they have received was something that the people of this country was badly expecting from them. And they failed the people of this country on that. But having said that, you see, the actions of the government, the actions of all these institutions that are playing partisan politics with the Electoral Commission is what has led us to the kind of belligerence we are seeing with the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission has become recalcitrant. They are not ready to do what they are supposed to do by law. Things that have been prescribed by law, the Electoral Commission feels even too powerful than our Constitution. Why am I even saying this? Now, the Constitution, Article 45, Clause E, enjoins strictly the Electoral Commission to design programs that will expand the electoral roll. Now, the Electoral Commission is enjoined by law to expand the electoral roll. This Electoral Commission, all their programs, all their activities have been geared towards reducing the electoral roll. And they don't even feel shy. There's no shame. They announce that they want to control the numbers and all that. Meanwhile, the Constitution says expressly that you need to expand the voter roll. Now, look at what they are doing with this. Fast forward from what happened in 2020. You would recall that immediately after 2020, they brought that proposal out that they want to use the Ghana card as the sole requirement to register. The whole idea behind that proposal is that let's put in this so that we can disenfranchise as many as the young people as possible, because we feel that with all the things that we have done, the biggest threat to our electoral victory is the young people, the first-time voters and the rural folks. So let's put this strategy in place to prevent them from registering. That has been the mission, the advocacy that the Electoral Commission is doing on behalf of the government with the NIA. So we gave a pushback. Our MPs did very well. Finally, we saw the back of that proposal. Now, what the Electoral Commission is doing now is using the back door to reintroduce that restriction again so that the young people are not able to register. Now, let me give you a full picture of what happens with registrations. Now, the registration process at every polling station has 4 stages. So you have the first stage where you would approach the registration officer. Then he will take your details, fill the form for you. It takes about 15 minutes. When he is done, he will pass the form to the data entry clerk, who would enter your data and pick your biometrics. That also ostensibly takes about 10 minutes or 8 minutes. Then when it's done, he will print your card for you and he will pass it to the laminator, who will laminate your card and give it to you. So to register one person, you need an average of about 25 minutes to register one person. Now, in the general registration exercise like we did in 2020, what the Electoral Commission did was that they did a cluster system. This cluster system was a number of polling stations put together
at one center.
Yes, and so you could have about 20 polling stations put together. You could have about 15 polling stations, depending on the proximity. Now, look at what happened. In that system, where 6 officials were used at every single station, where the district directors were doing supervisory work and were attending to challenges, the average registration per day was 75 to 85 people, average, across the country. So every polling station will register about 75 people in a day. That was that case. Even with that, look at how we were able to, we struggled with the registration. Now, what the Electoral Commission is proposing this time round, after failing to make the Ghana card the sole identification requirements for registration, is that now the registration will be done in the district office of the Electoral Commission. So look at Bole Bamboy. You know Bole Bamboy?
I know everywhere in Ghana.
It takes almost about 2 hours to move from Bamboy to Bole. I'm even talking about the main road.
Which is a good road.
Which is even a good road. I am not talking about the villages. The villages that borders with Banda, with Wenchi, and with Damango. How you are going to move all the way to Bole to go and register. Now, let me tell you some realities. When Jimenza did her press conference last 2 weeks, are you aware that when she did the press conference, no district director knew that they were going to do registration exercise?
How did you know? You are not working at the EC.
Oh, interestingly, it is my work to relate. You understand? And I know whatever goes on in the Electoral Commission, and I actually engage the Electoral Commission and several other political, operators across the country. When she was doing the press conference, almost all the directors did not know that we were going to do registration exercise. They didn't know the modalities, they didn't know the arrangements. And you see, this is so novel because I have been in the electoral management process for a very long time, at least from 2010. And I have seen how the election processes have been managed, including registration. How the information will be discussed, tentative dates will be given, how the modalities will be given ahead so that the Electoral Commission will start preparing and all that. When they did the announcement, most of the directors were hearing on radio. And from last press conference, last 2 weeks, till just last Monday or Friday, the Electoral Commission had not sent any official communication to the directors. They got some memo on Monday, and guess what the Electoral Commission is proposing? I started off with you by letting you know what goes on in the registration process. Right. So you need minimum of about 6 officials at the registration center. Every district office has a maximum of 4 officers. Every district, the maximum. Some are 3, some are even 2, because some are resigning because of the way the place is being managed and all that. So average maximum is 4. Now you need 6 officers to handle the registration officer. In fact, the 4 includes the drivers. You understand, of the directors. You need 6 people to do the registration exercise. Now you inform the directors that they are going to do the registration exercise in 261 district offices. The number is not up to what is required. So some of them complained. And the memo that was sent to them was that, okay, go and select 3 other people in addition to the permanent staff in the office and let them work for only 7 days. Meanwhile, we are going to do the registration for about 21 days. Let the 3 additional officers work for only 7 days, then they go home. Then that is for the municipal and metropolis. Then the districts select 2 people in addition and let them work for 5 days and go home. What is the thinking behind this arrangement? I foresee that the thinking behind this arrangement is that the officers at the district office plus the 2 people that will be added to them will become 6. So they would work for 5 days, then the 2 will go home, then the 3 of them will continue the process for 20 days. Now, the backlog of eligible voters who we must register from 2020 till now, Eric, is 3.5 million eligible voters. 3.5 million. Now, let's do some simple mathematics. I mean, some simple arithmetic. If we are registering averagely, let's use the data from 2020, averagely 80 people, we are looking at the maximum. I'm not even looking at the 70, 75.
But even before you go into the data that you want to break down in terms of the number of games, the EC would say that this is a limited registration exercise. We anticipate we are going to register 1.3, 1.4 million. So it could be a fine excuse.
And that is why, that is, I'm going to dispute that you will not even be able to get 1 million. So what is the essence of doing the registration exercise if you don't intend to register the people? In actual fact, there is a ruling in Ghana, that the 10-Ade ruling, that enjoins the Electoral Commission to register every single Ghanaian immediately you turn 18.
And there is continuous registration process that must go on.
Yes, and there's continuous, and the Electoral Commission is not doing that. And for 3 years, they have not done the registration. Now, when I turn 18 today, I reserve a right, a constitutionally given right to be registered as a voter. And the Electoral Commission is also enjoined by law to make sure that I register.
Yes.
Now, this arrangement that the Electoral Commission has put in place, if everything goes well, and we are registering about 80 people a day, multiply the 80 people a day
times 21
by the 21 days. See the number that times you are going to get times the number of districts. Now, when you do that calculation very well, the number of people that you are going to register is just around 417,600.
That's serious.
That's serious.
Now, but let's look at this. And I've monitored processes that appear to be very funny things happening across institutions. Before 2020, there was this go-to-court syndrome. If you challenge or you disagree, go to court, go to court. It would appear as if we have one group of people who have so much confidence in the court processes and another group of people who have lost hope in the court processes. One ruling that I will forever complain about is a ruling that rendered birth certificates useless. Now, it can happen that if anybody goes to court, the court may say that we don't know those who may not be registered. Nobody knows whether it's NDC people or it's MPP people. So everybody is affected. So what is your cry? A court in Ghana can rule on that thinking. If that so happens, it would mean that the court has legitimized what EC wants to do under this limited registration exercise, which in quotes is going to be limited to district offices.
Okay,
your reaction?
So Eric, that ruling was so defective in essence, and clearly any other case that involves this Electoral Commission and the president going to court may suffer the same fate. And that is even what makes it dangerous. You see, when people feel that they will not get justice in the law courts, they tend to find their own way of getting justice, because justice is like fluid. It takes the shape of any container you put it in. When you refuse to provide the environment for justice, justice will find a way to come. And that is why some of us are deeply worried by the conduct of the president, the Electoral Commission, and even the judiciary. This government has bastardized the judiciary to the extent that nobody finds hope in the law courts. Look, if you ask me as a political actor, and you ask any other person on the street who has interest in these matters, they will tell you that the courts are not the way to go. And we are resolved, even as political players who are supposed to have confidence in the institutions, that we are not going to court on any of our matters. And President Mahama has reiterated the point. Okay. And it is important that I underscore that, look, moving into 2024, we are not looking at sending any of our political issues to court to seek respite. We don't anticipate that.
Well, my guest is Dr. Peter Boama Otukono. He is the director in charge of Inter-Party and Civil Society Organization Relations, a former deputy general secretary of the party who wanted to be the general secretary but lost. That's just
yes.
But he's been very loyal to the party and stayed committed.
I lost honorably.
I didn't want to say that. You have said it yourself.
Yes.
But he was not a bitter person. He believes in democracy. He was loyal, had stayed committed, and the party knows the value in him. And today, he's the director who is going to be in charge of inter-party civil relations. When we come back, we'll be looking at IPAC. What has weakened IPAC? Is it because NDC has bad relations with the Electoral Commission or the smaller parties who have become the threat to IPAC's existence? And this call for legislating IPAC's role to make it more stronger, to make EC respect what IPAC should be doing to complement its effort. After this break, we'll continue the conversation.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
Welcome back. This is Ideas Exchange. My name is Ahianyo. My guest is Dr. Peter Boama Otu Kono. I'll share his nicknames when he was at Commonwealth Hall, University of Ghana, those days before we wrap up. The next phase of our conversation is to look at the Inter-Party Advisory Committee. We know how vibrant they have been since 1992, which has changed the face of our electoral body, building the integrity of our electoral systems until 2016. Then, after 2016, we saw something funny before 2020 elections where EC established a certain committee of eminent persons who are alive but are mute. I don't know what has influenced them to keep quiet. Every important person in this country is a member of that committee which was formed before the 2020 elections, and none of them became active or did anything differently during, before, and after the 2020 elections. And I feel bitter and ashamed because these are very influential people I will still respect, but for that blot, I'll continue to raise it. From the chief imam's office to the councils of whatever, religious councils or whatever you call it, heads of very powerful Christian institutions, to Trade Union Congress, to the Ghana Journalists Association. I remember at that time Afelmoni was there, even our own Nana Todadze, who is a former chief of staff, was a member, a lot of people, including the late Rawlings, who inaugurated it. And since then, we don't know what happened. Unfortunately, he died before the elections. Maybe if he was alive, he would have spoken to some of the bad things that happened. But IPAC today is dead, dead, I'll tell you. And smaller parties have taken over. They don't have any votes across the country. They don't have any representation in parliament. And they seem to be backing the EC to do things that are unwarranted. You have been a very active member of IPAC for years, which I know. What is wrong with IPAC today?
Well, Eric, before I deal with the case of IPAC, I would want to entreat all our party faithfuls, as much as possible. We will need to put the Electoral Commission to shame on this particular mission to grossly disenfranchise our people. And I would encourage each and everyone that from on the 12th, every single effort they can put in place to make sure that they move those who are disadvantaged, the vulnerables, to the center to register, they should do. They should start putting strategies in place. The party leadership and the new elections team led by Dr. Mani Buama are also putting some mechanisms in place so that we would be able to make useless their strategy to disenfranchise the people. While we advocate for the right thing to be done, we should also be strategizing, because there cannot be excuses for 2024. So we should also be strategizing to outwit their strategy to disenfranchise the people. Having said that, Johnson Asedu Nketia, national chairman, most often appears very prophetic, and I think if General establishes a church, he will get a lot of followers. You know, the Committee of Eminent Persons, when we said we don't support the Committee of Eminent Persons, the reason we adduced for not supporting the Committee of Eminent Persons or the establishment of that committee and decrying the formation was that, look, all these individuals are independent minds who, when we have crisis with the Electoral Commission, we go to seek respite, to get them to resolve the matter. When you put all of them together, including the Peace Council, which has become a white elephant under Kufuor, and all these Christian groups and all these individuals that you have mentioned, when you put them together to work with the Electoral Commission, what you have done is that you have simply crippled them and they cannot speak their mind on these matters. And I remember General Mosquito saying that, look, it is so going to happen that we would have crisis in this country in the electoral process and we have nobody to go to. And here we are. We have nobody to go to because the people who have been crippled. And I don't know whether the committee was a special purpose vehicle for 2020 or it's a standing committee that the Electoral Commission, invites them. Because the last time I checked with the Venerable Nana Tudazi, they met once in 2020 and that was all. There has not been any meeting at all from the Electoral Commission. After 2020, when we boycotted IPAC, this was a committee that ordinarily would have, activated their responsibility to bring us together. Nothing of that sort, because even the individuals involved have abandoned the committee. And so the Electoral Commission now is working alone, like Liverpool, just working alone with the government. And
why Liverpool?
Oh, they said they work alone.
But you see, on a serious note, somebody would say, and I remember there have been appeals by civil society organizations to NDC to go back to IPAC meetings. So you must take the blame for this free fall for
Eric,
EC.
No. We have decried the conduct of the Electoral Commission not once, not twice. I mean, a number of times, up 10 times. And we have invited civil society, religious society. We have invited Ghana to speak out. Somebody should bring sense into the minds of the Electoral Commission. And we have seen virtually nothing. Now, following from the cry, following from our disquiet expressed vehemently for over 2 years into the elections, and what happened in the elections, and what happened after the elections, we realized that, look, there is no need to go to IPAC. Because, Eric, do you know what happens in IPAC? The IPAC that we used to attend, where the Electoral Commission will bring issues, like, for example, this registration, and come and tell us that, okay, from the data, we have seen this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Political parties, what do you think about these problems? How do we solve them? Then we will listen to all political parties and we come to a consensus. Now, based on the consensus, the Electoral Commission will go and formulate a strategy that they think are consistent with our laws. Bring it to the IPAC. We discuss and agree or otherwise. There are two committees under IPAC. We have the legislation or legal subcommittee. Then we have the technical subcommittee. The technical subcommittee, when we were introducing the biometric system under Afarijan, that was put in place so that we can together advise ourselves, including the Electoral Commission, on the technology and the systems that we have to put in place to make the process efficient. And that worked very well. Now, the legal subcommittee was having representatives of all political parties, including the Electoral Commission, where we look at legislative work, how to formulate, then we agree before it goes to Parliament. Under Jean Mensa, all these committees have been non-existent. And what happens in IPAC is that Jean Mensa will come with her set of statements. In fact, she actually reads statements at IPAC. We don't do discussion. So they will come and on the agenda, registration exercise. Then she will come and read a long script. We have looked at this, blah, 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 and we think that we'll start registration on 20th, and the registration will be done at the district offices, and that is all. Do you know what happened at the last IPAC meeting? The last IPAC meeting happened a day before the press conference. And Eric, it will interest you to know that at that IPAC meeting, even the smaller parties, who ostensibly, I mean, we know there are challenges of members and all that, raise the concern that the system you are bringing, this district registration, will bring chaos and disenfranchise our people. We do not have any resources to go and move the people from the various villages to the district offices to come and register. And so the state has resources. You have budget allocated for registration. So you must make sure that you move it to the electoral areas or even do the cluster system. The Electoral Commission, after long arguments from all the political parties, assured the political parties that, okay, so this is what we'll do. We are going to look at it. We'll get back to you. After they spoke, they left. The next day, Jean Mensa held a press conference, and they were all listening to the press conferences, to their amazement, because they were expecting Jean Mensa to report back to them on Monday. They assured the parties that we'll come back to you on Monday with the new program. Then the next day, the press conference.
What can stop
that? Has been the characteristic of Jean Mensa in managing Electoral Commission. The reason why we boycotted IPAC is that we'll go to IPAC, and you are not even allowed to make a comment about what the Electoral Commission has presented to you. And we had maintained that if it is a platform to just come and announce the decisions of the Electoral Commission, then let us stay in our offices. You can put it into writing and bring it to us. Or perhaps you can hold a press conference, just as she did, and announce all those things, and we would follow. And so we made that decision advisedly because our participation in IPAC was becoming unproductive. And it is becoming uncharacteristic of what IPAC is supposed to do.
Now, I remember in 2021, maybe they will share some recommendations on the platform which I've put together. These are excerpts. In this Nana Atodadze led committee report on some proposals
and Professor Ahoy, yes.
And Professor Ahoy, there was one critical issue about bringing, empowering IPAC with a legislation. The CPP's General Secretary has recently re-echoed that call.
Well,
now, should it be a private member's bill, or maybe how do you want to see this put before Parliament?
So, Eric, when we finished the 2020 elections, as part of our desire for electoral reforms, we set up that at Nana Atodadze and Professor Ahoy committee. We did a comprehensive work, and we offered about 36 proposals for consideration. Among that consideration, which I recently reiterated at Legon when we did the elections roundtable by the political science department, was the need to legislate IPAC. And I made the case building from the benefits, the experiences from 1992. And in actual fact, all the progress we have made in our electoral processes, the accolades that we have earned from international, from the international community on our elections was because of the collaboration and the consensus building process. Now the consensus building process has collapsed. The Electoral Commission is relying on the provisions of the Constitution, which states that They are supposed to be an independent body. And they are blindly misleading all of us into a ditch. Now, if they think that IPAC is not a constitutional body and it is just an amorphous ad hoc creation of the Electoral Commission, we believe that to cure that mischief, then there is a need for us to immediately legislate that. There are several processes of legislation that can happen. There can be private members' bill. I mean, I have proposed the private members' bill because Jane Mensah will never do that. She will never put the regulations together. But whichever way, Eric, there must be a legislation.
But 2021,
that legislation will govern.
2023, what may have pushed your party, which is proposing this, you have almost equal numbers in Parliament, to have perhaps made an attempt to take this through the processes, either through one of your members or whichever way it could have been?
Well, it is something that is still under discussions, and you know such bills must be prepared, you know, very well. And I know that the team that worked on this was even working on something. Whilst several institutions have even approached us to re-engage the Electoral Commission, I am aware of several engagement meetings that were organized by several civil society organizations, and the Electoral Commission refused to attend. And so the current state of IPAC, the weakened IPAC, the non-supportive, non-productive IPAC, is as a result of the Electoral Commission's doing. And I think they feel very comfortable with it. And that is why I believe that we may have to quicken steps in working on this legislation for IPAC. If we are able to legislate IPAC, then we would be able to put together a set of directives and a set of instructions that will guide the running of IPAC.
And of course, also empower which political parties may have rights to vote, i.e. so that...
But even we didn't even use to vote at IPAC.
Mm-hmm.
You see,
consensus building.
Yes, it was consensus building, because you see, when you speak sense, everybody will know you are speaking sense. And so what used to happen is that people are allowed to speak and do proper research analysis.
But there's this notion that when political parties are in power, you exploit the smaller parties, which feed on your resources.
It's a very defective notion. It's a very defective notion, because I don't remember when we were in power, we were doing that. The small political parties exist on their own for their own objectives. And I think that their participation in IPAC is also important, because it gives them some impetus by law to also, you know, aspire to grow their political parties. And so those smaller political parties, I don't think that their presence in IPAC, you know, dilutes IPAC in any way. On the contrary, what has happened is that when this Electoral Commission took over, and they realized that most of the actions that they are undertaking was overwhelmingly being rejected, they decided to devise a different means. And the means they devised was voting at IPAC, which we have never done in the history of this country from 1992. We have never, ever voted on anything. And so when they started devising that, when they started receiving a lot of disagreements on their position at IPAC, then they had to resurrect all the dead parties and the non-existent parties. Parties were receiving licenses within 1 day. They were receiving certificates to bring them into existence within 1 day. Very new political parties that we have never heard of, just so that they can increase the number at IPAC and use those numbers, you know, to ostensibly push their case. And we felt that was very problematic. That was very, you know, defective, and that had weakened the position of IPAC and even the Electoral Commission's work. I am of a belief that the Electoral Commission can be strengthened. It is not too late. Jane Mensah should look at what is happening in other countries. And I took a very instructive note of what the chief said, that she should look at Mary giving birth to our Savior, Jesus Christ, coming into the world. Don't become the one who will give birth to the one who will destroy the world. Don't be the one to destroy Ghana. And where the Electoral Commission is going, where Jane Mensah is going, I dare say that Jane Mensah, if she continues on this path, will destroy Ghana.
Well, that's Dr. Peter Boama Otukono. I wish I could extend this conversation, but there's another exciting program that takes off immediately after we wrap up here. Now, tomorrow there's going to be an event at the UPSA. You remember this hashtag, Bank of Ghana Directors Must Go. The flyer was shared. Tomorrow we'll pick this live on TV XYZ. I believe our sister station, Power FM, would also be looking at this. And tomorrow, that's 2 p.m., 31st August, UPSC Auditorium. Dr. Kesla Forson is speaking, Mahama Yaraga is speaking, Professor Lord Mensah is speaking, and of course, Kwesi Pratt Jr. will be speaking. Join us tomorrow for the live coverage of this event. My name is Eric Ahianyo. It's been an exciting conversation.
Very exciting, always meeting you, my brother.
I tell you.
Tell Godfrey that we miss him.
Of course. I'm told you have a pig farm.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I am into full-time
I'm interested.
Farming. Oh, no,
to be continued.
So when are you visiting the farm?
Oh, I will come tonight or tomorrow. That's how we want to end the program. My name is Eric Ahianyo. See you again next week.